So the process of modernising China's air force has really been underway since kind of the early 1990s, but it's really over the kind of last 10 years that we've seen a lot of progress being made. Certainly if you look at the combat aircraft divisions, we've seen increasing numbers of indigenous J-10 and J-11 fighters entering service. And really we're getting now to a point where by the end of 2016, maybe early 2017, we should get to a point where more than half of the fighter aircraft that are in service with the Chinese Air Force should be of a modern standard, kind of fourth generation standard or higher. So that's been a considerable success, and because that has been a huge focus for the Air Force. In other areas, power projection in particular, there's been far less spectacular success. In the short term, they've been trying to buy refurbished IL-76 transports and IL-78 tanker aircraft from Russia and Ukraine, but it still remains a very underdeveloped area, and this is an area that has been a focus since the Chinese defence white paper in 2004. So it's something they've been working on for a while, but far less spectacular progress. So certainly in terms of developing those kind of offensive and defensive capabilities, there's been a lot of movement. But when you look at kind of strategic protection and some of those other supporting capabilities, there's been far less success over the last few years. So the success is really in developing the Chinese Air Force and modernising the Chinese Air Force have been very much gone hand in hand with the development of the Chinese aerospace sector. And that's because China is very much focused on self-sufficiency in terms of defence equipment. It doesn't ideally want to be importing any defence equipment from anywhere. So certainly in the most basic terms, what we've seen over recent years is obviously we've seen the development of all these different kinds of combat aircraft and other support aircraft as well. We've also seen aircraft production rates increase. There were around 100 aircraft were produced in 2010, around 130 maybe will be produced this year. So in those most basic terms, things are definitely improving. We've seen far less imports of aircraft over the last 5 years or so. In other areas, there's still definitely deficiencies. There's gaps in capability. Aero engines have always been a problem in China. We've seen quite a lot of success in terms of the WS-10 program. I don't think you should underestimate the success in productionizing that aircraft engine. That's now supporting J-11 production at Shenyang. But at the same time, we've got other key programs, the J-10 program, the Y-20 program, the L-15 program, H-6K program, all dependent on imported engines. So that's obviously still a problem. Power projection capability is one of these areas that's really underdeveloped in the Chinese Air Force. One of the main reasons for that is the fact that the indigenous aerospace sector can't produce, at the moment, a large transport aircraft. I mean, the Y-20 will change all that, but up to date, there's been no acquisitions of kind of domestic large transport aircraft. It's certainly true to say that the aerospace sector has been developing over the recent years. I think it's increasingly able to support that modernisation process, but there's still gaps remaining there. And I think achieving this kind of self-sufficiency, that's kind of the end goal, is still a long-term goal. We won't see any kind of self-sufficiency before 2025. So I think we'll see a gradual shift in some of the modernisation trends over the next 5 or 10 years. I think certainly what we would expect to see is continuation of this kind of recapitalisation process in terms of the fighter divisions. That's going to remain a focus for the foreseeable future, well into the future. But alongside that, what we'll also see is an increasing focus on kind of the support functions of air power, so strategic lift, air-to-air refuelling, ISR capabilities, things like that. And these are really going to be the force multipliers for the Air Force going forward. So in order for the Air Force to kind of achieve this kind of overall goal of strategic modernisation, these are really the areas that we need to judge in terms of success going forward. And I think, you know, they will be achieved eventually. It's just the timeline around that. But I think once they are achieved, we'll certainly get to a point where it has a transformative effect really on Chinese air power, and Chinese air power will become far more central to PLA strategy.